The truth is that your body has brand new cells replacing old cells constantly. Some organs are completely replaced in weeks. Your brain requires only a year to replace itself. A perfect cell gives birth to another perfect cell. The problem is that cells begin to malfunction, and then they pass along this information to the new cell, and that's where disease and aging come from. I discovered a way to identify the resonant frequency of a diseased or aging cell. Then, with alternating current, I matched the frequency. Tesla pauses for a moment and says, "Think of it this way. When a high-pitched sound carries the same resonant frequency as glass, the glass shatters when the sound becomes too loud. In the same way, I shattered the cells carrying misinformation and left only perfect cells to create more perfect cells. Because I was already 86, I had to go slowly, gradually building up the healthy cells. But within a year, I looked the way I do now. Needless to say, the man found dead in my apartment wasn't me. The powers that be arranged for my supposed death and subsequent cremation, so no one could ever prove it wasn't me. And then I was given full control over this biosphere. There is no disease," he adds enigmatically. Looking around, you say, "Have you ever heard of the Vedras?" "Yes," says Tesla, smiling. "Everything you see is based on the world they created thousands of years ago." "Did you read about them somewhere?" you say curiously. "No, there's no recorded history of the Vedras," says Tesla. "I discovered their culture quite accidentally through remote viewing." "And that's how you created all of this?" you say in amazement. "Yes, this biosphere is the most highly guarded secret in the world," says Tesla, using both hands to indicate everything around you. "Only a handful of people know this exists." "Are you planning to share your secret with the world?" asks Matthew. "I had hoped to create a perfect utopia, and that's exactly what this is. But we've had an unforeseen turn of events," he says miserably. "I'll explain what's happening with the earthquakes as we walk. But we need to hurry. It's not safe out in the open. Come with me." Quickly, you walk across a grassy meadow to the edge of a tall cedar forest, just as the sun is nearing the horizon. "I'm going to try to answer your questions and fill in some gaps." Then, as if reading your mind, Tesla looks at you and says, "You're wondering how you got in here, yes?" Smiling, you nod. "With remote viewing, I knew you were coming, and I programmed the scanner to let you in," says Tesla. "Why?" you say, grateful but confused. "Why did you let us in if this is such a big secret?" "Well, some highly unlikely events have been occurring. And, to be honest, we need your help," says Tesla frankly. "But how did you know exactly what was going to happen?" asks Matthew. "Aren't there alternate or parallel timelines that would have taken us someplace else?" "Yes, of course," says Tesla. "But there are certain timelines that hold the most potential. Remote viewers follow those timelines while keeping track of what is actually occurring in real time. So you might turn left in a situation where going right held the most potential. A remote viewer would psychically follow you down your path to the left and then continue on the most likely path into the future. So there is a lot of adjusting that's constantly taking place, and that's how it works, at least most of the time. There are exceptions. Looking at you, he says, "Do you know that you actually died and came back to life during the satanic ritual?" "You know about that?" you say in a shocked tone. "Yes, I was tracking you. I saw the ritual remotely," says Tesla. "Do you work with Thomas?" you say, horrified. "I don't work with Thomas. The biosphere has been mine to create without interference, but he is the one behind it. He created the biosphere. I don't know where the technology came from. I only know that he brought me here and gave me the freedom to create everything based on the world of the Vedras. If it was successful, the plan was to show its success to world leaders and bring this way of life to the rest of the planet. But now the biosphere is on the verge of collapse." "What's happening?" you ask fearfully. "Well," says Tesla with a wry smile, "it actually has something to do with you." "With me?" you say, shocked. "You may not remember this, but when you died, you visited the spirit world and returned to your body in a matter of minutes." "I was really dead," you say, still unable to fathom the idea. "Yes, of course you didn't feel dead, because there is no such thing as death, but you were in another dimensional reality and unable to connect with anyone or anything on the third dimension." "I do remember being above my body," you say, "but I don't remember anything else." "That's not unusual," says Tesla. "I don't know exactly what happened to you, but wherever you went, the frequency of that dimension caused a great deal of disturbance upon your return." "You mean I'm the reason the biosphere is collapsing?" you say, horrified. "No, your entrance was more like the straw that broke the camel's back," says Tesla lightly. "You see, Thomas has been using my technology underground." "He's trying to access the inner earth," you exclaim. "I know," says Tesla, exasperated. Suddenly, you feel strangely lightheaded and off balance. And then rocks and stones begin falling from the sky above. "Run!" yells Tesla. "Under the trees, right up against the trunk." You race into the forest and stand directly under a large branch, with your arms around the tree for support, as Matthew wraps his arms tightly around you, sheltering you with his body. Rocks and boulders crash down through the treetops around you and explode a few feet away in the field. You both hang onto the tree as the ground beneath you sways and surges with an unstoppable force. Even as the final tremor settles to a stop and no more stones are falling from above, you are still shaking and holding tightly onto the tree. Rubbing your back, Matthew says gently, "I think we're safe now." "Come," says Tesla briskly. "There's a much safer place ahead. It's not far." As you all begin climbing a small hillside, Tesla says, "At the lowest level of the biosphere, we're several miles underground and very close to Thomas's tunnel. The tremors that he set off were barely noticeable on the desert surface, but we felt it here right away, and every part of the biosphere was affected. I warned him to stop immediately, but he wouldn't listen. Thomas used remote viewing to see the future, but the probability of what happened was so small he never looked for it or even considered it. But What exactly happened? Asks Matthew. Well, in the same way that a high-pitched resonant frequency can cause glass to vibrate and eventually shatter when the frequency is loud enough, my device causes the earth to vibrate. If the vibration is controlled, they can easily dig out the tunnel. But if the frequency gets too loud, everything collapses instead. Looking at you, he says, when you passed between the dimensions, your entrance created a resonant frequency, a sound wave that instantly magnified the frequency of my device to the point that it collapsed the tunnel. And though the device is buried, it's still running. But can't they dig it out and stop it? Asks Matthew. No, the tunnel would just continue collapsing. But then why are we here? You ask in a complete panic. What can we possibly do? Come with me a little further, says Tesla. I'll explain everything. With only a few more steps, you reach the knoll of the hill, and on the other side, in the valley below, there stands a magnificent golden pyramid, hundreds of feet tall. You and Matthew both stop in your tracks, staring wide-eyed at the spectacle before you. Tesla looks at you and says, Thomas built this pyramid out of solid gold over 70 years ago, before I ever came to the biosphere. Everything he's accomplished, along with all his current plans, is directly connected to this pyramid. For years he's tried every frequency known to man to activate the gold, but with no success. What do you mean? How do you activate gold? Asks Matthew. Imagine you lived in the North Pole and only knew of water in the form of ice. That would be similar to what we know of gold. Now imagine all of the things you can do with water and steam. Well, that's the idea of what happens when gold is activated. Come this way, he says, leading you down the hillside. Everyone from the biosphere is meeting here tonight. But you said that Thomas built the pyramid 70 years ago. How's that possible when he's only in his 40s? Says Matthew. That is, unless he's been using your technique with alternating currents to stay young. No, that's not Thomas's secret, says Tesla. Then pausing for a moment, he looks at you and says, Do you remember the high priests you trained in your lifetime as Alex? You nod. Yes. How do you know about that? I've been using remote viewing to piece together Thomas's plans for quite some time, says Tesla frankly. Thomas was one of the priests you trained and taught to build the pyramids. He looks quite different now, but not because he's been born into the program repeatedly like most players. The truth is that he has played one single game for thousands of years by taking over different adult bodies. I don't understand, you say. Well, there's more to the game than you realize. Because life on Earth holds the possibility of a great deal of pain, physically and emotionally, and players are never forced to stay in the program. If you want out badly enough, the program will arrange for you to leave one way or another. An accident, a fatal disease, war, things like that. But if the player's exit takes place without destroying the avatar body, it's possible for another soul to jump into the avatar at the exact moment the original soul exits, and before the avatar body has a chance to die. It will often appear that the person exiting was on the verge of death and has had a sudden miraculous recovery, when in fact the original soul is no longer there and has been replaced by a completely different soul. But only the most advanced players are capable of such a thing. They're sometimes referred to as walk-ins.
But wouldn't people notice the difference in their personalities, even though the body looks the same, you say?
The new soul, the one who steps into the avatar, retains the memories and abilities of the original soul. But you're right, the personality will be different. And for this reason, all walk-ins have a unique, unbreakable agreement. Much like your agreement to forget everything when you're born into the program, they agree to only change their circumstances in a gradual way. And this is because people who know them will accept a change in personality as long as there isn't a radical, immediate change in their outer world. This protects the new player and also helps to assure that no one will suspect there has been a soul exchange. The high priests, and Thomas in particular, mastered this ability, and they've been able to overtake unwanted bodies as needed. That's how they've managed to control and manipulate the program all this time.
But then why are we here? Says Matthew.
Have you ever had a plan, but then everything turned out quite differently?
Says Tesla.
Of course,
says Matthew.
Well, I don't collaborate with Thomas or agree with most of his methods, and he reveals very little to me. But from what I've seen remotely, it seems that everything is somehow connected to this pyramid.
Looking at you, he says,
as far as I can tell, Thomas is convinced that when you died as Alex, you took the secret of the true purpose of the pyramids with you. I also believe that when you were Alex, you used the science of imagery to project the world of the Vedras thousands of years into the future, and that this is the time and place where you sent the energy. This pyramid was built to be a portal into that reality.
Tesla opens the door as you all step inside to walk along a glowing golden corridor, lit sporadically with beeswax candles in small carved wooden holders on the floor. Considering that everyone in the biosphere is supposed to be here already, you think it's surprisingly quiet. You can't hear anything but the sound of your own footsteps echoing down the passageway. Finally, you come to an immense doorway that swings silently open. As you step inside, you are shocked to see hundreds of people sitting on the floor, silently meditating. But what surprises you even more is the fact that everything is glowing and light is streaming through a clear capstone at the top of the pyramid. Your body involuntarily shivers from the energy that is surrounding you and coursing through your body as Tesla leads you onto a platform that rises a few feet above the floor. Whispering, you say to Tesla, "With rocks falling from above, won't the glass break?" Tesla replies quietly,
"It's not glass. The capstone is a single, flawless diamond."
"But the base of it must be at least 6 feet across," says Matthew incredulously.
"That's right."
As a tremor shakes the building, Tesla says,
"Just sit right where you are. You'll be fine."
Matthew sits with his arm protectively around you. Light still pours through the diamond capstone, but nothing happens. You only hear the muffled sounds of large rocks crashing onto the capstone. You lean into Matthew and whisper, "When we first arrived in the biosphere, I was thinking, oh my God, I'm so awesome. I created this, just like Asha said I could. Here it is, the world of the Vedras. I thought I had finally gotten it right," you confess quietly. "But now we're in this perfect place that's everything I imagined, and the sky is literally falling, and it's because of me."
"It's not your fault,"
says Matthew, holding you close. "But it is," you whisper desperately. "If I had just stayed dead and not come back, that earthquake wouldn't have happened, and Tesla's device wouldn't have been buried, and this biosphere wouldn't be collapsing. And those people are all looking at us like we're going to save them," you say anxiously. "But I don't know any secrets. I have no idea what to do." Walking over to you, Tesla says,
"Everyone in here is perfectly safe."
Then, reaching out for your hand, he says,
"Can you both stand up for a moment?"
Taking Tesla's hand, you stand up and look tentatively at Matthew. All eyes are instantly focused on you.
"These are the two I promised you,"
Tesla announces to the audience. You shoot a worried glance at Matthew as everyone in the pyramid smiles warmly at you. Strangely, no one seems concerned about the boulders dropping out of the sky. If you didn't know better, you would have thought you were attending a family reunion, just a really, really big one. Directly in front of the platform is a group of children. They don't look the least bit frightened. In fact, it seems they are eagerly anticipating what is about to happen. You wonder if the opportunity to hear Tesla speak is a rare occasion, because the children's eyes are all lit up as they look up at him with excitement.
"As you all know, it's impossible to stay here any longer. It may seem like a loss, but our biosphere has really been more of a cocoon. Admittedly, we didn't see this coming,"
Tesla concedes.
"But what caterpillar would spin its cocoon if it knew it would turn into liquid before becoming a butterfly?"
he says, smiling broadly and winking at the children in front of him.
"So sometimes not knowing is part of the bigger plan. It gets us where we need to go."
The adults smile and nod as the children giggle.
"We thought we could continue living here indefinitely, and that in time we could move to the surface and share with others. But humanity is still not ready to live this way. So of course you may be wondering where we'll go and what we'll do in a world that is now completely foreign to us. None of us knows exactly how this is going to work out, any more than a caterpillar can conceive how it will ever be capable of flying. There's nothing to do but trust the process. In our meditations, we've seen clearly that this pyramid is a portal, and though we don't understand the mechanics, I believe these two,"
he says, indicating you and Matthew,
"carry the memories that will lead to activating the portal."
You have no idea what Tesla is talking about. Looking past him, you see that all eyes are focused in your direction. Heat rushes up your neck, turning your face bright red with embarrassment as you realize that you will personally be letting down hundreds of people, eagerly anticipating some kind of miracle that you can never deliver. Quietly, Tesla speaks to you and Matthew.
"Please sit down where you were."
You both sit down Indian style, a few feet from the edge of the platform facing the audience, as Tesla speaks to you quietly.
"I know that neither of you have a conscious memory of how to activate the pyramid. But I believe you hold the information unconsciously in your DNA, which holds the records of every game you've ever played. So just trust that you already know, and silently say to yourself, if I knew how to activate the portal, what would I do? That's it. Just allow yourself to make something up. You don't need to say a word to anyone here. Just let images flow in and out of your mind. Everyone will telepathically recognize the answer when it comes through. Even if it makes no sense to you, they will understand.
At first, you can't stop worrying. All of these people are depending on you. And to make matters worse, if they are all telepathic, then they certainly know that you're clueless. Of course, everyone could survive in the pyramid when the biosphere collapses, but they'd have no food or water. Everyone would die, and it will be your fault for not remembering anything useful. Taking a deep breath, you try to remember everything you learned from Asha and Richard and the portal, but your mind is a complete blank. You try to remember the cheat code that Asha had taught you. What was it? It was so simple it probably wouldn't work, but everything else you've been thinking definitely isn't going to help. But whatever it is, the cheat code is gone. Then to your surprise, you feel Matthew slide his hand beneath yours. Opening your eyes, you see him sitting directly in front of you, gazing deeply into your eyes without looking away. At first you feel awkward and embarrassed, and then you find yourself looking steadily back into his eyes. Suddenly, it seems as if Matthew's face is shape-shifting into someone familiar, yet completely different, with deep brown eyes, smooth dark skin, and thick black hair. It seems as if he is staring at you through an opening which becomes smaller and smaller, until, to your horror, he slides a single brick into the opening and seals the wall shut.